Welcome to another episode of Skeptic's Corner. I'm your curator or host that knows the most ghosts. Your guide to the other side. D'Angelo Williams, and we're here with Taylor Russ, Maeve, and Gary Barnes.
I'm like Cher, Madonna. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So this is the Trans Alleghany Skeptic's Corner. A lot transpired. We got a lot to get to. Maeve, your first investigation as a Skeptic team member. Gary, I thought this was going to be the location. The reason why is because, you know, even after getting through Sweet Springs, I was like, nothing really happened there. But then getting to this episode, I was like, surely something was going to get you. But we're going to get to that. But I want to start with Taylor. So Taylor, going into Trans Alleghany, what did you know going into it? Not just from the paranormal, but from just about the location going into it.
I think this was one of the locations that I didn't know anything. I think that was because after Bobby Mackey's, we kind of decided Taylor can't know much about the location. So I think this is one where I didn't really know anything. Nick and the other guys showed me a video in the hotel room about the place, like the day of or day before.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So Maeve, I'm gonna come back to you because you obviously this was your Bobby Mackey episode, Taylor edition. So we're gonna come back to you. Gary, what did you know about the location kind of going into it? Not from a paranormal standpoint, but from what happened at this place.
So I'd known a little bit about it. I knew what it was. Okay. I knew that it was a mental hospital. I knew it had been open forever. Okay. And just dabble in the paranormal side. I've known it as one of the biggest hot spots in the United States. So like that's stuff I knew going in. Okay, so she was doomed from induction when she said it was a bucket list place. Those same words doomed Taylor. So Maeve, what did you know about the location before going in?
I knew quite a bit. A lot of my friends had been there. I knew quite a bit going into it. I've heard experiences from my friends, other people that had been there. I knew. I didn't know the history much. I mean, I knew it was an insane asylum. That feels weird to say. Yeah, I know. But I knew it was an insane asylum, but I really didn't know much. Okay, so
in whatever order you want to answer them, I got a question for you guys. So back in the 1900s when this place was built, it was an insane asylum. Obviously, we see or view mental health different now than saying, hey, it's an insane asylum. But even back in the 1900s, there was a place originally for people to go to and seek refuge. But it turned into something so much more. Building a place like that back in those days to where we view mental health right now, where will you guys see the paranormal activity going in a sense of there's a lot of things that happen in this place. Yeah. There's a lot of things that happen in this place. Yeah. Where do you think the paranormal can go from the things that you believe that happen in this place?
Well, look, you're talking about mental health in the early 1900s. It's a lot different than it is now. Yes. So when you think about it, you really think of like American Horror Story, like how they portrayed it. It's like dark, evil, like the bosses, the higher ups there were all very cruel to the patients. There was no real everything was blanketed. So if you were insane, you were insane. It's like there's no on the spectrum, nothing spectrum about it back in the day. So if you were insane, like no matter what, they could just tell you you're insane, and then you're stuck in there. And you have if your family's like keep him in there, you're stuck. So it's just dark. So when you have darkness like that, you leave there's a lot of potential for energy to manifest itself in a dark kind of energy. So that's why you feel like heavy when you walk around that kind of place. It's just heavy, you know.
Okay. What about you, Maeve?
Well, in the 1900s, mental health really was, how do I say it? Like, not all the people in there were crazy. Like you could, especially the women, like you could piss off your husband and
Which?
you'd be in there. For real. But also,
Note taken.
but also they didn't have any place else to put them. And so if you were crazy, that you didn't, I don't feel like you went there to seek refuge. I think you were put there because they didn't know what else to do with you. And so that energy, I picked up a sad energy, just so sad. And the people suffering, of course, they're going to leave their energy. There's a lot of madness at that place. Unchecked, untreated mental illness in itself is going to leave a whole vibe there. So yeah, I feel like going into it, there was just a multitude of layers.
I'm going to say the same question to you, Gary, but I know that the answer is going to be completely different. But I pose the same question to you, Gary. How does that energy transfer over to the paranormal?
I don't know if I'm going to say there's energy, but I'm going to say I think the building itself is just a negative connotation on the area. Not like the city, but just that whole area that it's on. Because like they were saying, like people got put there just because they didn't want to deal with them. They didn't know what it was. ADD, which Taylor has admitted he has. So, like, he could have been put there. Like Maeve said, like, if you disrespect your husband, that could be seen as something that could put him in there. So, like, I felt like it was a way to not have to deal with people, but it was also, I think it was a way for doctors to experiment. It wasn't even about like, hey, let's try and treat these people. Let's see what we can try and figure out with science. That's why they were doing lobotomies. They were doing these crazy things that we know now. We're proving that they don't actually do anything to help you. It's just a way of limiting what you can do as a person. Because if they do a lobotomy and they destroy that nerve, you basically are a living zombie. You don't have any, you just walk through the day, go through the motions. You're not actually doing anything. So I think it's just a bad connotation on the location. I'm not saying there's negative energy because I don't feel the energy when I walk in. I know they do at different times when we go to these places, but for me personally, I didn't feel like there was any energy in the aspect. I think it's just a sad environment knowing that the way people were treated at this location is just a sad and like a bad connotation on it.
Okay, so we're gonna dive into the investigation because this has turned out to be one of my favorite investigations because there was a lot of activity that happened. And I know that it happened to Maeve. And Maeve kicks this thing off day one. She go in and she has a music box session. She was the only one.
So something like what I had at Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah. She had a
little different reactions.
Yeah. So Maeve, I know that before going into this location, and I'm gonna pose this question to Gary first, but I want you to answer it after him. But before going into this location, hearing all the stories from your friends and then getting you all amped up before you go into this location, and then right off you go in there by yourself and this music box go off. I want you to tell me what you're thinking, but Gary, what are you thinking though?
So again, very reminiscent of Bobby Mackey's. She knew a lot about the history of the place. A lot of people have hyped it up to her, so she's already on her edges in.
You said
like
2.0?
Maeve 2.0. Because we've seen, obviously with Euroshrine, she'll push the limits.
Yes.
Our previous investigation with her, no fear from her. So seeing that she had fear, I think it obviously plays into going into it. She was told all this stuff going in, so she's already heightened. She's already got a little bit of fear at base. And then something like the music box going off, which is the creepiest sound in the world. So like that really plays a factor into what I say is a lot of it's in your mind.
Okay, I understand that, Gary, but again, going back to Maeve, Taylor, you can chime in when you want to, but it went off exactly after she said what she said, Gary, like to the T. So that's very hard to refute, but again, Maeve, in that moment, what are you feeling? And do you still feel the same way you felt looking back?
No, I don't feel the same way. Looking back, I could probably do that again, no problem. The music box, I never used one of those. And you're right, that is the creepiest stinking sound ever. So that didn't help at all. But yeah, I don't disagree with Gary on that because I was already freaked out.
Tell us what you're feeling right now, man.
Dude, I'm feeling like I'm about to run the fuck out of here. Is that you coming in here? Stay here.
I was already freaked out going in. But I would like to point out that every time I have ever done an investigation, I've never done a solo. And I've always had somebody with me, really. So, and that's so much easier. And then you put me in the back of nowhere, and I had no communication. And no, that was a big note. That was a big note for me, dude.
Solos are hard. A lot of times I'll see on comments on ghost investigations, like, why do the ghost investors always freak out when things happen? You know? It's like, go in there by yourself.
Hold on, let's clarify. A lot of them don't go do solos. They have people with them.
That's true. That's
a lot
true.
of people aren't by themselves. So I think it's heightened with us because, like you said, there's a lot of other investigators, but very rarely are they truly by themselves.
Right.
But even saying that, so you guys were all together, and I want to hear this because I probably should have started with this. During the group investigation, when y'all first kicked off, you hear something in the hallway. What did it sound like in the hallway that y'all heard when y'all was like, oh, what was that? What's that noise? Because I couldn't really make it out in the video, but what was it that you heard?
It's just noises coming from a completely silent room. You hear any kind of wood crack to drop of like water or whatever. You just hear stuff. So when you start hearing multiple things, you're like, okay, it sounds like something over there is moving. Something over there is moving. Could be an animal. It could just be a bunch of wood cracking. Could be like an air hits that side of the building and causes, a lot of noises. But we're hearing noises that are in a completely silent room. So we're in like a vacuum of no sound, and then we start hearing stuff. Then we're like, okay, it sounds like something's over there, but who knows what it actually is.
Well, and I think a lot of it is like, I know one of them, we heard it on the 4th floor, which was the only floor that had wood floors. So walking on it, it creaks. So, and it was cold. So like that affects the building, and it can make noises itself. And some of the windows were open. Now I wouldn't say it's nothing like Waverly. Waverly was open air. So you had a lot of wind. So this wasn't like a lot of wind, but there was a little bit. So I wouldn't say it was the wind, but I'm saying the cold plays a factor with the only floors that are wood in the building.
So I have to ask this because I know everybody want to know out there. During the spirit box session, Maeve heard her name, or did she not hear her name? Maeve said that she thought she heard Maeve. Gary said he thought he heard Judy. You said that you thought you heard Maeve too. Going back, do you still feel like you heard Maeve, or was it Judy?
So I think it was hard to hear on the thing. Like in the moment, you hear so many things. I know Taylor's not a huge fan of the spirit box because it is hard to make things out. So again, you have no idea. And the good thing is, like, the bad thing is ours broke at that investigation. So we don't have the recorded footage, but we have a spirit box that records the session. So we can actually go back and listen to it, but that one, it broke during the session. It got dropped by me, I'll admit it. I dropped it and it broke. So we don't have that footage or the audio. So, but that is something why the one we use records so we can go back and listen, because it is hard to hear on the cameras and stuff.
No, he dropped it on purpose because he knew
Gary,
he knew there was stuff on that. But I want to interject there too. Like, my name sounds a lot like hay. Like hay. Yeah, anything, like Maeve, hay.
Okay.
Anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
It did make a sound that sounded like, hey, kind of like that.
Yeah.
So could it be Maeve? Could it be just?
Well, now you said that it sounded like it was in a female voice. That's the only reason why, because up until that point, it had all been male voices. And then you said the Maeve came in with the female voice, and that's what it perked my attention. I was like, well, hold up. If he hears a female voice, then that has to be something, right?
Could be. Sounded like female to me. Yeah, all the other voices were, a lot of male voices coming through. So when you hear a female voice, you do like, your ears pucker up, so.
Okay.
But my issue with the female voice, though, would be it does scan radio stations. There are female artists on the radio, so it could always pull that too. That's the whole hardest thing about spirit boxers. I know Maeve has a different device she likes, and we're going to continue using different things and try it because we don't want to just rely on one because, again, nothing's proven to actually work. So.
Okay. All right, so there's a segment now that I want to introduce, the Skeptic's Corner, where we take questions from subscribers. Oh, wow. And we're going to do one every episode.
We have a subscriber?
Yes, we do.
It could be you.
And I'm going to actually answer this question too, because I think it's a really good question. It's Rachel from Shelby, North Carolina. Okay. She asks, where do you guys come up with your questions to ask the ghosts? Because she says she's seen some very interesting ones, but she wants to know, where do you come up with how you ask? Because obviously you ask, what room am I in? Versus her saying, do you want to get to know me, or you want to hang out? You can leave with me. Or Gary saying, touch me, push me. Like, where do you get the questions from that you ask?
Some of them came from a list I Googled online, like what to ask ghosts.
Probably should have admitted that one.
So, hey man, you gotta fake it till you make it, you know what I'm saying? The other ones are just natural, whatever comes to your mind. Sometimes you wanna be funny, sometimes you wanna lighten the mood. So the beer question was who say hell yeah if you wanna have a beer with us. That was kind of just off the top of the dome. But most of the times you just ask the obvious questions over and over again, which kind of gets annoying. Because you ask, what's your name? How many of you are in here? Can you name one of our names? So you try to change it up and spice it up a little bit, but there's only so many yes or no or questions, leading questions that you could ask something paranormal to get a decent response. So you kind of have to stick to the main ones, but occasionally you just make up some.
Well, I like those too, because it's how many fingers am I holding up behind my back? Yeah. You know what I mean? That way, if you get something and it's right, that's impossible. My questions kind of lean more towards personal, come with me, I'm okay to talk to, do you have something to say to us, stuff like that. So I'm more of I forgot how I worded that the last time we talked about it. Immersive. I'm an immersive investigator. I like to get in, feel the place, and then just kind of feed off it.
Okay.
And for me, I like providing some questions that's based on the history that I don't know about. Because if it matches the history that he knows that I don't, to me, that's more proof. Because if I can get, hey, who died in this room and I don't know who it is, but they say the name and D knows who it is, to me that is, I don't know how to debunk that. If it matches, that's because the problem is with hey, what color shoes am I wearing? What color shirt? We all know what we're wearing. So we're listening for that color or that. So we're influencing ourselves a little bit when it's dealing with things around you. Or what room am I in? Well, we're listening for the name of that room because we know. So we're influenced a little bit. So I try to stick away from that. I want more of the history based or more of the stuff that I don't know that I can actually find an answer and we can fact check it. Because then there's no influence involved. So taking all the influence away from it is the hardest thing to do when you come up with the questions.
You just killed my argument, because my argument was going to be that if they're able to say the things that we're looking for, then it, for instance, I was going to back up his question, what room am I in? If it says living room, then obviously, it's not something that's just going through random stations, blurting out something random. You can say how many people are in this room, and it could be 4, somebody can walk out, it could be 3, it could be 2, that could change. But what room am I in? Because some people are man, that's a dumb question to ask a ghost.
For example, if we're at Trans Alleghany and you say, hey, what room we are in? This was John's room. Well, we're listening for John. So if it comes anything close to John, we're jumping. He said John, I heard it. But we're influencing ourselves to listen for that word because we already know. Now the audience won't know, or they may not know, but that's the thing is I want to take that all away, which is also why we do the whiteboards with spirit box, because I don't want to influence anybody. I want everybody to get their own interpretation because everybody's going to hear something different.
The only problem I have with the history part of it is we're assuming things about ghosts that would make sense to us, but what if there's ghosts in this place that are live down the street and just happen to float over and be oh, there's 4 ghosts here. I'm alone by myself in this one. I'm gonna move in here. And he doesn't know the place really that well. We're what room is this? He's I don't know, I just moved here too.
Well, they can say that. So if they say that, we're good.
That's funny, bro. That is funny, bro.
It can be possible. We gotta have all possibilities open.
That could be. That's funny. So Taylor, we knew during the Trans Alleghany investigation, you had a loss.
Yeah.
Do you think that loss factored anything in how you felt going into that investigation? Because day one, you was like, I can't go into this place alone.
Right.
And was it one of those that you was dealing with some maybe personal issues that could have potentially not, or was it just the place?
Had a real big death happen in our family. It's our cat. And it's been really rough being here, not being with her. Do you ever feel sad and lonely?
Okay. So yeah, a lot had to do with what was going on. Annie, we were dealing with Oreo being sick. When I left, she was kind of like struggling, and then, you know, it got worse as I left. So the first day, I was just like, Annie was calling me a lot, and we were going through it, and I was just like, this is so much happening. Like, of course, right when I leave, this happens. And then the day two, we just kind of knew that Oreo was going to pass, and it was like more of calm for me because it's just kind of weird. I wasn't even focused on the investigation really. It was all about how Annie was doing. So that kind of influenced my whole investigation. So
Yeah, I saw that because there was a moment in there where you were texting her or she had texted you, and then something came through on your app, and it perked you up.
Yeah.
What was it that came through on your app where it was like, I mean, I understand in that moment, so it had to be something powerful because you had asked a question. Did it answer your question? Or
I think is either the kids' room or is it in the hallway? We're talking about when I was by myself in my solo?
yes.
Even the kids.
kids room.
I think it was something the kids that I had said to the kids, and the kids responded.
Yeah.
But it was definitely that was the most active room for me personally. I think there was something about that room that they knew I was there, they knew I was friendly, and it was very like relaxed and chill, but it was definitely active to me. That was the room to be in out of all the rooms.
So I'd asked the question. I think it was Maeve answering. Oh, did you?
No.
Yeah.
Finished. We have to redo it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Maeve, you introduced us to note mode. Where did note mode come from, and what inspired it?
It comes straight from my soul. And I just really think that I've never been on a solo before. I've always had somebody with me. And as you guys clearly pointed out earlier, I'm afraid of the dark. And that's the darkest hall ever. And it was like light and happiness and then pitch black. And literally everything started dying. Like it did. Yeah. Like you had to bring me another light. Yeah. So at some point. But no, it's just a nope.
You came up with one of my favorite sayings of all time. There's no fucking way I'm going in there.
There's no fucking way.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said that.
Yeah.
Like ever.
But you said it. And what's crazy is that right behind you, Gary goes in, right? Gary goes in, and at some point, all of y'all pop the flashlight on. I just want to know, Gary, just real quick, and then, you know, Taylor, you can tell me about your flashlight popping situation. Gary, you walk in and you come in hot. You immediately attack Maeve and she don't even know it. You say all the creaking, the building settling, like just hot. Yeah, I know you did. You did. But he come in hot with that. Like, yeah, you know, missed the big shot, Skeptic. And then he popped that light on. Boop, boop, boop. I just want to know what was the confirmation for if you knew that the building was settling?
Yeah, so it's just settling. But again, we're doing this to make me a believer. So if I can turn that light on and something's down there, well, now I'm a believer. I'm not gonna find out if I don't turn my light on to see. So I gotta turn it on and take a look. Like I said, look a little look-see and see what's going on. So, but that's all it was, because it was interesting that we all turned our headlamps on at some point at different points. Now she did it multiple times. Yes.
I left mine on.
And then Taylor turned his on once, and I turned mine on just to see down the hall. So it was interesting, but I will, it creaks. So it is creepy when you're in there by yourself. And plus, it takes you 7 hours just to walk to where we're going. It's 14 corridors just to get there. So you're walking a long ways. And if there is something there, we got a long ways to get out. So if Taylor had to run out like he did at Bobby Mackey's, I don't know if he makes it. There's so many doors you have to go through. He might get lost.
He did get lost. He did get turned around. Yeah. So I do have to ask this question, and I talked about it during the episode. Just tell us the difficulties or the hardships of having such a massive location and doing things. Like, why was this so much different from maybe Waverly or maybe Sweet Springs? What's the difference? Because those locations are ginormous, not as big as this one, but what made this one so different? Because I mean, again, I pointed it out that, you know, it was so different for me is because the challenges were, okay, there's 49,000 rooms. Okay, there's a story associated with each room. How do we get the best ones and present it to everybody and do a good job doing it? That was the hardships for in my eyes on how do we do that. I'm saying for you and for Maeve and for Gary, what kind of hardships do you see in doing a gigantic location as opposed to doing a more intimate one, like Bobby Mackey's?
Yeah, I think this one is similar to Waverly a lot of ways because we did half of it one day, half of it the next day. It's more intact than Waverly. There's a lot more left of it, so there are more rooms that are like differentiated than the other ones, whereas Waverly was kind of like everything just looked trashed and old. Like there was no differentiating room 2 and 4, floor 3 and 4, or 2 and 4, whatever. It all looked the same. Whereas this was like, okay, this is where the beds are. This is where like the nurses go. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, to me it was very similar in the fact that we had to do it split up, and there was a lot of ground to cover. So it's like, yeah, you got to decide which rooms are the best, which ones you're like drawn to for day 2, like which ones you're gonna go back to, and then also start new ones because you have to do, you might touch an old one that you did day 1, but then you have to go back on day 2 to all the new stuff. So it's like, there's a lot going on. You gotta figure out, you know, you gotta spend as much time as you can in each location, but you only have so much time.
Yeah, so obviously we were only able to get to one solo the night one with Maeve, and that's because of like the location. It's 2 of Waverly's. 2 Waverly's could fit in that place. That place is so big, and like you said, we couldn't really focus on many rooms. We had to focus on a lot of hallways, which that's where we rely on the guides to let us know, okay, here's where things may have happened and stuff without giving us stories so that we could throw the cameras there. And we only have, like Taylor just said, we have such a limited amount of time. We might only have 7 hours, 8 hours in a location, and it may take us an hour and a half to set up. So, and then we still have to interview and all that kind of stuff. So like it limits how much time we had the first night, which is why we only had one solo, which is why we try to make it up with mini solos the second night. And we try to add in things because like big locations, it's hard to get everything in. And I want to do both sides both nights, but that's not physically possible with these locations. So we had to make concessions, and sometimes it does affect it. That's why I felt like we only really had one true investigation night at this one, because we didn't really get a lot of time the first night on the other side because of our limited amount of time.
Okay, and I want to ask this question, and what is your favorite location so far that we've done? And I want to see from each skeptic's corner how much it changed or if it does change.
Okay.
So every skeptic's corner from here on out, I'm going to ask the question, what is your favorite investigation? And you can leave it there. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but I want to see if it changes. But in the event it does change, I want to know why.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So give me your favorite investigation so far.
So, favorite location so far. Bobby Mackey's is always gonna have like a special place, but I feel like the most fun I had and the most locked in I felt was Sweet Springs.
You were locked in. You were laser focused, but you were laser focused because the investigation before that, you were Maeve.
Right. Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Something about Sweet Springs just, I felt, in a flow state there. So I felt like it was just a good overall investigation. But Bobby Mackey's obviously scariest, probably location still.
Okay. Yeah. Maeve, what about you? I know that this
I've only done one. I've only done one.
Okay. So what would you say about this one? Obviously, it was a bucket list. You said it was. Did it live up to the expectations on your bucket list?
No. And I think I voiced that many a time during that investigation. I was pretty let down by trans. Now, again, I had some great experiences and I was scared shitless, but I kind of agree with him. Don't want to say that much, but I kind of agree with him. I had myself ready to run out of there before I even got there. So I was expecting a lot of evidence, and maybe that's because we didn't have time to see the whole thing. We didn't have time to really spend a good amount of time in our spots. So, not that I would have stayed any longer, but
What about you, Gary?
So for me, it'd probably be the Euroshine, because that's when we got to meet Maeve, and now she's a team member. I know Taylor wasn't on that one, but I do really like that one just because I think we got to try to push the envelope and things, and I'm really about doing that. And even with Maeve during that, because we did a seance, we did a summoning, all these things that people say is taboo, but like, if somebody doesn't believe, I want to push the envelope. I want to try to experience it. So I'm willing to do these things. I'm willing to put myself on the line to experience it. So to me, I think that's always going to hold a special place because we've done that. We tried to do that. And I would like to try that again at some point down the road and just try new things. Because I think that's what it's all about. Always trying to do something different that is not just the normal go in, ask questions, and see if we get a response. Just do something different, because if we're going to find something and something's going to make me a believer, I think if we do it with some new way that other people aren't doing, it's going to make it that much more of actual proof and evidence, though nobody can dispute it and say it's faked and all that kind of stuff, because that's one thing we will never do. I won't allow it to happen. Right.
Bobby Mackey's is my favorite place because there was a lot of things at play there. I wonder what? Yeah, it was Taylor was definitely unhinged. But yeah, he wasn't. Yes, it was very. That's why I said he was unhinged. Like, I feel like that's the perfect word for it. But there was a lot of factors in play there. But not only that, like, I saw something in Taylor that I never saw before. Like, I looked in his eyes and I was like, "Whoa, bro! Like, I've never seen this in you before." But at the same time, though, it was really cool because we were one of the last teams to investigate that place. And it was so fun watching the music box go off for 15 minutes and then you going in a circle and not being able to explain it. I think that was the closest that we've come to. All we had to do was mimic it and we now have a believer. So that was the closest episode we got to making you a believer. Trans Alleghany, obviously we gave our ratings, but we didn't give our ratings. So out of 10, how would you rate Trans Alleghany?
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10.
Why?
It was just bad. Not a lot happened. The personal stuff, plus not a lot happening.
Yeah.
It just, it's to me so far as the first underwhelming investigation. I would like to go back because the place is reputable and it's like one of the bigger ones, like one of the more popular ones. I think we just didn't get a good draw. You know what I mean? We didn't go on a good night. Just the energy was off. We didn't get too much. So I'd like to go back, but yeah, 4 out of 10 for this one.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, man?
I don't disagree. Just because it broke my heart.
Well, first of all, man.
Well, no, listen, I was going.
It has to be higher than 4 out of 10, man.
No.
We saw you.
Yes.
Yes.
I was getting ready to follow up with that.
Okay,
I was getting ready to
I
follow
wanna
up
hear
with that.
this.
As an investigation where we got hardly any evidence. It was all personal, which I'll give that like top notch because I've never been that scared in a place before. Okay. But if we're talking about evidence that we captured and just the investigation as a whole, like I said, it broke my heart because it was not everything that I wanted it to be. Okay. And maybe that was just me. I set myself up for that. Okay. But yeah, wish we got more evidence out of it.
So what would you give it?
I won't give it a 4 too.
That's crazy, man.
I mean, now, like I said, I'll give like my
The music
person.
box went off after you said, set the music box off, pretty much.
I'm still on the fence with the music box.
You heard what sound like your name. Don't let Gary get in your head. Don't let that skepticism.
The 4 comes from my letdown. Because I was thinking, like I said, and that's me, that I went into it.
So you wanted a ghost to pick you up and whisk you across the threshold.
I wanted to have some of the experience my friends had had.
Okay.
And they had some pretty intense experiences.
Okay.
So I was
Okay, I
ready,
respect
man.
that.
I was
respect
ready.
that.
And it just let me down.
Okay.
So,
Okay. What about you, Gary?
So I'm going to start it off with, as we said previously in things, you can't guarantee investigations can have action or you're going to get anything every time. Because if somebody gets something every time, they're lying. Yeah. It's not possible you don't get something every time you do one of these, especially if you don't believe. I don't think we're ever getting anything, but like people can't go out and get something every time. It does not happen. So, and this could have been one of our times where we didn't really get any evidence. So according to evidence, I would say a 2 out of 10. Location, it's a 10. I would love to go back and do a full, have more than 8 hours at a location. Maybe we had 12 hours each day where we don't have to worry about the setup and we can do a full investigation. And maybe we have 500-foot cords instead of 300 so we could hit more rooms and stuff like that. That may play more into it. I just don't feel like we were able to get a true 2-night investigation the way we want to get a 2-night investigation because of the issues we ran into and our time constraints. So I would like to go back and do it again, and so I can raise that 2 up to maybe a 4 with them.
Okay. I'm gonna rate it. I'm gonna rate it a 6. And I know that I may get some grief from y'all, but I'm rating it a 6 based off of Maeve's experience. I understand that Taylor was experiencing some other things, but based off his experience and the fact that it was a place that was so high on the list, Gary, that I was like, oh yeah, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket, and I kind of came out the same way Maeve did. But at the same time, I also have to understand that like you don't get activity every time you go in there. And I'm gonna close with this. I was watching a television show, and the name of that television show is Evil. It's very similar to, there's one that's, hey, I can absolutely prove this, and there's another paranormal person that see it from a paranormal angle. And the statement was this. He said, if I can prove it all the time, it's science. But if I can prove it every once in a while, it's a mystery.
Well, that's
Is that not crazy?
Well, and that's
I was like, damn, man, this is
and
us.
that's the great thing. Like we are venturing into the unknown, which is a mystery every time we do this.
Yes, and that's what I want to end it with. Again, I want to thank y'all for joining us for another Skeptic's Corner. Gary, I'm gonna leave you with this. Taylor and Maeve as well. Where we going next?